what's up everybody? It's Amaya. So you may notice that there's a little something missing over there. There is typically a little container full of palettes, and that is not there today because that's what we're going to be talking about. I have the whole little container right here. These are all of my everyday eyeshadow palettes. The eyeshadow palettes that are just my most favorite, my most loved, my most used, and I wanted to kind of show you guys which palettes those exactly were. I also want to say that this is not to brag in any way, it's not to show off my palette collection. This is really just to show you guys which eyeshadow palettes I'm reaching for all the time, because I know there's so many coming out all the time and I'm always getting new ones, and I just kind of want to show you guys which ones actually work really well and which ones I'm actually reaching for on an everyday or weekly basis. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so the first palette I'm going to talk about is the Kathleen Lights Dream Street palette. This palette has the most gorgeous packaging in the whole entire world. It's like a rose, gold, and cream marble. Absolutely stunning. So the pan sizes may look like they're regular eyeshadow sizes, but they're actually a little bit smaller, which doesn't really bother me. I mean, I have never gone through a pan of eyeshadow before, like ever. I know there's people that have, but for the most part, you're not necessarily going to go through an entire eyeshadow palette. So because this is so affordable, I don't really mind the pans being smaller. I absolutely love this shade right here, which is called Spark. It's so gorgeous. It's a beautiful, bright, corally red that kind of looks more like pink on the eyes. I also love this shade right here, which is called Sweet Dreams. And it is just the most beautiful glittery gold eyeshadow topper shade, which I am totally into. This one I use all the time. I feel like I can make really wearable looks with this, but I can also make really different looks, which makes this such a great palette. I also love Colourpop's formula. A new palette addition to this little area is this guy. This is from Pure Cosmetics. This is the Pure and BoxyCharm palette, which I recently featured in my BoxyCharm unboxing. I have been wanting to play with this palette so much more because I absolutely loved it in that video. I love the eyeshadow look that I made, so I want to keep experimenting with this. I haven't gotten to play with it much because this past week I haven't worn a ton of makeup, so I haven't gotten to use it much, but I do want to keep it in here front and center so I can see it and I can play with it. Color selection is really cool. It's very similar to the Dream Street palette in the way that you can make really colorful looks, but you can also make more neutral everyday looks, so you kind of get the best of both worlds in one palette. I love that there's a mirror, so yeah, really excited to keep playing with this palette. It's just really, really good. Okay, next is this guy right here. This is from the drugstore, and this is the Milani Everyday Eyes palette. So basically these are all matte eyeshadows, and it's from the drugstore, you guys. This palette is so good, and I'm gonna tell you why. If you are looking for the perfect all matte eyeshadow palette and you don't want to spend like 20 bucks on like the Urban Decay Naked Basics palette, or you don't want to spend a bunch of money on a bunch of singles, this is a great option because you have your matte white and your matte black, which are complete staples. You also have a nice like sort of light cool tone-ish transition shade. You have this really beautiful warm orangey brown. You have a nice neutral dark brown, and then you have an even darker brown that's a more like rich chocolatey brown. Some people may not like this because you don't have any shimmer shadows, but that's why I love it, because I have so many shimmers. Sometimes I just need a nice basic matte palette to take with me. Whenever I'm doing makeup on other people, I always bring this palette with me because it blends so quickly, like so quickly. The shadows don't need to be built up, and I can just take whatever shimmer shadows I need in this palette and you're good to go. So excellent for traveling because it is really sturdy. So yeah, check this out if you're looking for a good matte palette, especially from the drugstore. Okay, the next palette I have in here isn't something that I necessarily love, but something that I wanted to try out, so I kind of dropped it in here. It is the Wet n Wild Quad, and this is in the shade Sweet as Candy. I got this in a Target subscription box. I did not buy this. I don't typically like eyeshadows from a Wet n Wild. I don't know why. They're just very, very soft and kind of crumbly, and I don't feel like they show up on the eyes well, nor do they blend well. Like I had the Comfort Zone palette, and then I had the Walking on Eggshells like original trio, and I did not like either of those. So when I received this, before I just wrote it off, I decided to test it out because they do have a new formula. There's some mattes in here. It's not just all shimmers, so I decided let me try it out. I've only used it about twice and it hasn't blown my mind. This shade up here is literally the same as this one right here. This one just has a little bit of like shimmer to it. And then this pink shade just isn't really my thing. I don't like pink shades like that on my eyes. I wouldn't have bought this for myself, but I don't want to, like I said, completely write it off until I test it out more, or I don't want to give it away before I test it out more. So that's why it's in here right now. Next I have the Morphe 15N. This is the Night Master palette, and I really like this, you guys. I know Morphe is raved about and people have so many different opinions on it. Some people say it's great, some people say it's awful, some people say people just hype it up because they have discount codes. Other people are like, no, it's actually good. And I'm one of those people that's like, no, it's actually good. I don't have a discount code. I mean, Morphe has no idea who I am. I actually do truly like their shadows. These ones are so pigmented and so creamy. I also really like the shade selection in here. It's kind of different than your everyday neutral palette because you have these nice purples right here. You have some more cool tones, but you still have like a nice warm transition right here. You have this really beautiful like corally shimmer. And you do also have like a matte white, which I really like. So this sort of style of palette is really nice because you don't have like 35 eyeshadows. You have 15, and I feel like 15 is a little bit more manageable. So if you're someone who would like to try Morphe shadows, or you like Morphe shadows, but the big 35 pan palettes are just too overwhelming for you, check out some of their smaller palettes because I really, really like this one. I feel like the quality is the same. It's awesome, and I love their new like packaging as well. It's really, really nice. Okay, moving on. Of course, we have the Anastasia Modern Renaissance. I mean, how can we not? I just love this palette for so many reasons. I mean, you guys have heard me talk about this palette. You've heard lots of people talk about this palette, so I'm not going to go on too much about it, but they're so blendable, they're so pigmented, and they're really awesome. I love the color selection. Such a good palette. Okay, next I have this one right here. This is the e.l.f. Mad for Matte 2. This is in the shade Summer Breeze. I feel like this palette is such a good eyeshadow palette, but at the same time, I kind of have some issues with it because all these shades together kind of look the same. Like no matter what look you're doing, pretty much you're going to get a similar style look, which I don't mind because I love that look, but I feel like the original Mad for Matte is more versatile. So if you're looking to get one of the Mad for Matte palettes, I personally would go with the first one. I feel like you can get more variation out of that one as opposed to this guy. I like having both of them because you can kind of mix and match. This is a really nice companion palette if you really want some nice warm shades, but you don't want to spend a ton of money. They are such great quality as well. Very creamy, very blendable. And like I said, here's the Mad for Matte original one. This is in the shade just matte, I think. I don't know if it has like a name now, but this is from a while ago, so it just says matte. This shade right here I did not use up. It completely shattered on me a long time ago. I don't know why like the black shadow in the palette always shatters. It's never like the light shade down here, it's always the black one. I saw Kelly Gooch talking about her, I think it was her Naked 2 palette, and her blackout shade is completely shattered, but it's the only one that like fell out. Like, what the heck? Why couldn't it be the white one? Even if this was like 15, 20 bucks, I feel like I would still buy it because the quality is just so good. Another e.l.f. palette. I really like their palettes that are in this sort of like rectangular shape. They're just really easy to store and they're really easy to travel with as well. This is their Prism eyeshadow palette, and this is in the shade Sunset. This is so, so gorgeous. I love these shades. This is an all shimmer palette, so something different for me, but it's definitely a great companion palette. Like this and the Mad for Matte 2 go so well together because they have very similar tones. I just love how different this palette is. Like I love how gold and yummy that bright shade is right here. And you have like the rose gold. We also have these purples and you have a bright white. I just feel like it's really, really nice. Really great palette. I like it. So next we have a palette that I can't quite decide how I feel about it. I've been using it for a few months now, but I don't know how I feel about it. It's the Persona Identity palette by Sonia Gasparian. This eyeshadow palette is so beautiful. I mean, look at it. Have you ever seen an eyeshadow palette like this? I know I never have, but it's just so gorgeous. I love how it looks. Love the colors inside as well. You also do get a mirror. So this, she says, is the ultimate eyeshadow palette for brown eyes, which is great. I don't think you need to have brown eyes to use this. Obviously, I don't. But people who do have brown eyes, this is a great palette for you. However, There are just some issues that I have with this palette. The first thing is all the shades are very, very dark, which is great if you have a deeper skin tone, but if you're someone who's very fair, you're gonna have a hard time making a look without having to add in a few more shadows. Like, you really don't have a transition shade. You have Charming right here, which is a nice mid-tone brown, but I wish there was something just a little bit lighter in here. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. You can just grab one of your single shadows or grab one of your other palettes. But I also feel like the eyeshadow formula on here is very pigmented and very creamy, but it's kind of difficult to blend at times, which for me is not that big of a deal. I will spend a little extra time blending if I need to, but it is kind of annoying. It makes me not want to reach for this palette as much as other ones. And these shimmers, while they are pretty, I feel like they are a little bit powdery. They remind me of the Wet n Wild shadows a little bit. So if you're someone who really likes Wet n Wild shadows, you're gonna like love this. So there's so many of you out there like, what the heck, the Wet n Wild shadows are amazing. So you'll probably love this palette. It's just that really, really creamy, kind of powdery formula that I just don't really get along with. Next we have the Maybelline City Mini and Shayla palette. This palette is so cute. I love how small it is. I also love you get your nice cream and you get your black. You also have this really nice red tone shade and then 3 shimmers. I feel like you can create a pretty cohesive look with this palette. You might have to add in like a nice transition shade. You can make some sort of look with using just these shades, which makes me really happy. They also have a really nice formula. I love how tiny this is, but yet they don't sacrifice pan size, which makes me really happy because when things are so tiny and there's a lot of wasted space, it's like, why didn't you just give me more product? I don't need that wasted space. I've only tried this guy, so I can only speak for this one, but I have heard good things about the other one, so check them out. Next, I have this guy right here. This is the Blink and BoxyCharm Electric Eyes palette. I don't know if you can still buy this or not, but it's so gorgeous. It reminds me a lot of that e.l.f. Prism palette that I was talking about before. These shadows are so creamy and so pigmented. I love this palette so much. I don't use it that much because it's not that often that I need these type of shades for a shimmer on my lid because they are so pigmented and they are so like pow. When I do want a metallic shade though, like something super metallic and super ba-bam, this is the guy I reach for because it's so gorgeous. And I also love the mirror in here as well. Next we have the Huda Beauty Smoky Obsessions palette. I love this so much. I'm so glad that I bought this. It is like 20 something dollars, which when you see the size of it, it's like the size of my hand, right? You guys are like, $20 for that? What? But if you look at the pan sizes, they are bigger than the Modern Renaissance palette. Yeah, you don't get as many shades, but they're actually really big pan sizes. This one I love because you have this nice like peanut buttery warm brown. You have these 2 darker browns. They are very similar, so I wish maybe they had switched one out because they pretty much look the same on the eyes, but then you have this black shade, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 shimmers. This guy right here is more like a pressed glitter shade, and then all of these right here are more shimmery shades. It's the perfect smoky eye palette. Like, I don't even want to say like, yeah, it's a really good neutral. No, it's the perfect smoky eye palette. She totally got it right. The formula of these shadows is really good. I've heard people say that they are different than her typical palette, so if you don't like that formula, check out these ones because they are so creamy, they're so blendable, and these shimmers don't crease or have fallout on me, which I really appreciate. You also have a nice mirror in here, which I like. Okay, let's move on to some bigger palettes now. So the first one I have is the Morphe 3502 palette. This palette, you guys, is not a palette to be messed with. Let me tell you that much. If you are looking for a fiery, bright, red toned palette, then look no further than this guy. These shadows are incredibly pigmented. It's insane. The shade Fire over here, you literally tap your brush into it and you can do both eyes, no problem. Like one tap and you're good. That's how pigmented it is. Like these shadows are so pigmented that I find myself not reaching for this that often, which then you gotta evaluate, like, do you want a shadow that's so pigmented that you don't want to reach for it on an everyday basis? I don't really care because I wouldn't necessarily wear these type of shades on an everyday basis anyway. I tend to go for things that are a little bit more subtle, a little bit more neutral. But if you want a nice warm tone palette. If you really like those red smoky eyes, this is that palette, you guys. It's so, so good. The shimmers in here are also very nice. I like this guy right here a lot. This is not an eyeshadow palette that I recommend for beginners or someone who's just looking for something like, oh, nice everyday. No. You will get more than you bargained for if that's what you use it for. And then I also have the original 350 in here because it is so good. If I had to choose one or the other, I would choose this one. I feel like this one's more workable. You do have a nice matte white in here, which I really like. This one, you don't have that in the Morphe 350 too. And these colors are a little bit lighter. If you're someone with a more fair skin tone, I would go in with this guy because you still have these oranges right here so you can create those fiery eyeshadow looks, but you don't have to be worried about the intensity and the darkness of the 3502 eyeshadows. I love this guy right here. It's the most creamy, pigmented, beautiful, I don't even know what this is. It's like a champagne peachy shade. So gorgeous. I also love this guy down here, this really pretty fiery shade. Just a really, really good palette. It's a staple. It was raved about so many years ago and it's still so good. Next we have the Jaclyn Hill and Morphe palette. This guy is such a good palette. I really, really do like this. Regardless of how you feel about Morphe and Jaclyn, this palette is so good. Like if you took her name off of this palette, I would still buy it. If you took Morphe's name off of this palette, I would still buy it because the color scheme in here is so good. I love that you have these pops of blues down here. They're so, so beautiful. You have a lot of different tones in here. Similar colors, but different tones, which I really like in a palette. Also, I love the packaging. I have the original cardboard packaging from her first release. If you buy it at Ulta or on the Morphe website now, you do get like a laminated, I think, cover, so it's more wipeable. I think this one is completely wipeable. I think it's just fine, but that's none of my business. And then I have this beautiful marble palette right here. I got this from Amazon. It's from the brand Altair. I'll link it down below if I can find it. It was like 20 bucks, so not much cheaper than the Z palette, but I just wanted it for the marble and pink. Like, how cute is this? It also has a mirror in here, which I really like. This is where I keep some Anastasia shadows, some Colourpop shadows, MAC shadows, an Ofra shadow, and then 2 Morphe shadows right here. This palette is really, really cute, but let's talk about the eyeshadows in here. I love Colourpop eyeshadows so much. I would say that they are my favorite single eyeshadow formula. I mentioned that in my If I Could Only Keep One video. I also really like MAC shadows, and the Anastasia ones are really, really gorgeous. I did not buy these full price. I bought them at TJ Maxx and Marshalls when they were on sale, which made me a lot happier because I would not buy these for $12. Just saying, I don't feel like they're any different than any of these $5, $6 shadows in here. Not really anything I dislike in here. Next I have my Z palette, and this has just some more single shadows. I have Morphe, I have Carrie, I have Makeup Geek. These are like some other brands. I think one's like Dirty Little Secrets and then one's Ofra. I forget. I put it in my single eyeshadow collection video. I just forget which they are. But these are, again, just neutral shades that I use all the time. I bring this palette with me a lot when I am doing client makeup because I can just kind of dip in here, mix things together. I can play. It's very, very easy. This is what I'm wearing on my eyes today. I'm wearing this shade, these 2 shades, and then this guy right here on my lid. Then the last 2 palettes in here are from Too Faced. I have the Sweet Peach palette and the Chocolate Bar palette. So let's start with the Sweet Peach palette. I have recently started using this more because I kind of neglected it over the fall and winter just because these shades don't really say fall and winter to me. I love the smell of this so much. It smells so good. I wish I had a candle that smelled like this because it's amazing. Anyways, I think this is actually a really good palette. I know there were some people that when this originally launched didn't think it was a peach palette because it didn't have all peach shades. But then you think about it and you're like, are you really going to use an eyeshadow palette that has all peach shades? Because I feel like if they released that, people would be complaining that it was too peachy and all the looks were going to look the same and la 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 la. I personally like it. I think the shadows are really good quality, other than a few duds. I really like this palette. I think it's super cute, and even though I'm not a huge Too Faced fan, I like this palette a lot. And then of course, the long-loved Chocolate Bar palette. I wish I had a candle that smelled like this one too. It just smells so good, and they do taste like chocolate. My sister and I have tasted them. Then I made her taste the sweet peach one, and it did not taste like peaches, she said. So don't taste the peach one, taste the chocolate one. It will taste like chocolate. But anyways, I just actually used this palette yesterday. Whenever I have an event to go to where I don't want anything too like dramatic, but I also don't want something that's natural, I go for this palette because I have a go-to look with it. It's just the most beautiful gold smoky eye that doesn't look super dramatic but also doesn't look super natural. Like I said, it's just such a good palette. I really, really like it. I think that you can do so much with this, even though the colors are very neutral. They're kind of, quote, boring. You do have some fun shades, like you have these two purpley shades right here. You do have a green. You have this really nice burgundy. I feel like when people look at it, they see the browns, and that's it. But if you kind of experiment with this and just think outside the box, you can do different things with it. But honestly, I'm fine with it being my neutral palette. I use this all the time and I love it. So that is it for this video, you guys. I hope you guys like it. I hope you liked seeing all of my eyeshadow palettes and having me kind of break down why I love them so much. I do have a drawer full of eyeshadow palettes that are not necessarily my everyday ones. They're not necessarily bad, but they're not necessarily my favorites. So if you guys want to see that, I can definitely do that too. But if you're just kind of like, nah, we're good, we can just do that too. So yeah, I will see you in the next video. Mwah!